I'd like to thank all of you who came here today to help celebrate Ricky's life. I know that most of you really never, have met her. A lot of you have just seen her briefly because we spent time here but not a lot of time in Yankton. We did enjoy our trips, which is the reason we kept coming up here quite a bit. But I'd like to say one thing, those of you who have really not spent time with my wife, was if you know Donna and you know her grandchildren, there's a lot of traits that are similar. And as I talk about my wife, you'll probably see some of those traits. As I got up this morning and looked out at the cool air, the fog frozen in the trees, she had an artist's eye for looking at things and her surroundings. She appreciated really the seasonal changes, nature, the mountains. She loved the trips coming up here and the different scenery, looking at the blue sky, and she even liked some of her paintings. She used to look at complex highway interchanges, and she liked the beauty of that, the geometry of that, and she would paint a highway interchange, which sounds peculiar, but that was the type of person she was. She just saw something in everything she looked at. A highway interchange, a building. All of that brought an interest to her in her paintings. And if we had all of her paintings here, you would see that she painted in just about every media and every style. She was always wanting to try something new. Those of you who have come earlier and seen the video tribute to Ricky, you may have noticed that some of the photos that of her high school time and her high school at school were really not typical of a Japanese person. And it's one of the things that attracted to me. She was a blend of two cultures when we first met. You think of the Japanese people of not wanting to stand out. If you stand out, you're the nail sticking out and somebody's going to pound you in. There is one photo that I really like going through, and I hadn't seen it before, but it's a picture of the softball team. And she really loved softball in high school. She got a real love for softball and baseball. But everyone's sort of sitting there calmly for the group picture, and she's sitting there with her arm up, saying, yeah. That is very unusual in Japan for someone to do that, for someone who wants to stand out. Again, as I look through photos of her and my daughter and son and others, that you can find her. There may be a class photo of 50 children or 50 people, and you'll see Ricky because she'll have her head turned, she'll be smiling. She'll sort of be different than everybody else. It's not difficult, because I know a lot of times when I look at class photos, I can't find anybody. But it's really easy, and in her elementary school, I can't get back to the baby pictures, but I just see her. She was a unique personality, a unique person. I can get this really mixed up. And there was another thing that I noticed in putting this together, and that's one thing I found that I really hadn't looked at. It's like discovering a new person, going back and looking at photos, looking at what she's written. And I haven't done all of that. I really want to do more of that. But it was like learning things about her that I never knew. And it's a completely different viewpoint. And I always say, maybe I wish I could have done it, but I don't think, coulda, woulda, shoulda. I doubt if I could have looked at it that way in the past when she was alive. But if you look at her yearbook, everybody is signing it in one place on one page, and they're all signing it in kanji or what we call hiragana, Japanese script. Ritsuko, no. She signed it, Ritsuko copied in cursive just the way she signed her name now. She learned that and never changed that. That was important to her. It was almost, when I look back now, that she was preparing herself for a life outside of Japan. That there was something that, and I know that we talked, that she never expected that. Her family had other people that she was supposed to marry. They were going to arrange a marriage for her, and so that was what they expected of her. But she didn't expect that. And her father, before he died, was very concerned, or really wanted to make sure she had a good education. And in Japan at the time, there was a Methodist mission school, Fukuoka Chugakuen. It was a girls' school, a private school. It was, as a parochial school area, one of the best schools in the city. So he wanted her to go there to get a good education. That was his legacy for her. The teachers, she had American teachers and Japanese teachers, English teachers, but it was an environment different than a Japanese school, different than a school here. It really exposed her to Japanese culture, European culture, American culture, and I think that she absorbed that and took that in much more than a lot of her other classmates. But when I look at her other classmates and see what they've done in life, and Ricky has really kept a strong friendship with 3 or 4 of them. She would talk on the phone weekly, write letters. They would share paintings back and forth. There was a very similar feeling between them. Now, again, those of you who have met her, including me, she was very outspoken. She was someone who would tell you exactly what was on her mind. She didn't have to think too much about it. I said when you smile. But again, this is not a trait that you do in Japan. You're sort of supposed to sit back and go with the flow. It was a opinion that was very honest. It might be hurtful at times, but it was an honest opinion, and it was appropriate. And those of you who's hard to imagine, if you've talked to my daughter, or she's spoken with you, you might find that that's a similar trait that she's adopted. I don't have to worry about what she's thinking about. She does a very good job of letting me know. And it's not hurtful. I think other people may wonder why we're talking to each other, but it's something that she grew up with, and I really appreciate it in my wife. I met Ritsuko 50 years ago in 1960. A good friend of mine had a Japanese wife and asked me, I'd only been in Japan for about 5-6 months, and if I wanted to meet somebody nice. Well, I really hadn't. And if you've seen the pictures, I was very shy. I was not a very extroverted person, very quiet. So I said, yeah, if somebody can do this for me, I will go out. So she arranged a meeting at a restaurant in the city, Fukuoka, which is probably about 3 or 4 million people. And in my mind, this is going to be like a little small restaurant, 5 or 6 tables and things like that. I hadn't been out very much, so I get to this restaurant, walk in, and it's what we then call the supper club, and they're long gone, and nobody here is old enough to remember something like that, unless you've seen movies from the 30s. It turned out to be a quite large restaurant, and it had a band, a dance floor, the tables were up on tiers, and I walked in there, and absolutely everybody in the restaurant was Japanese. And being that typical American, they all looked the same at that time. And I walked through the restaurant, and she was wearing a green coat with a white carnation. We argue about that, but that's how I remember it. And I didn't see her. So being pessimistic that I am, she didn't show up. She didn't really want to come. So I turned around and I started to leave, and I'm almost back to the door. And this Japanese woman comes up and gets me and says, "Are you Paul?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I realized it was rather obvious, being the only American in the restaurant, this was going to be a lot easier for her than it was for me. So, you know, and again, I don't think she realized, because she could have just avoided that and just let me walk off, and I was ready to go out and leave, because I just didn't believe that she was there. You know, that started our relationship.